billions of dollars in debt that they owe us is the fact that the Biden administration authorized Ukraine to fire U.S.-made and supplied missiles deeper into Russia following months of lobbying from Ukraine, which has the Russians apoplectic, saying this could lead to World War III. Now, a lot of people want to just dismiss that as empty rhetoric. I know you don't think we should. I agree with you. Explain.
Well, this is an unbelievably irresponsible action of an unbelievably irresponsible and failed administration. This war could have ended years ago. It could have been prevented entirely had Biden just had some little measure of diplomacy to understand the Russian concerns. But this current decision that now U.S. missiles, attack missiles, will be used and fired deep inside Russia in the waning days of a failed administration, it's just such a reckless disregard for our safety and for our lives. President Putin's been making the point all along that, look, if you use these particular weapon systems, this is Americans that are doing the targeting, that are essentially launching these missiles against Russia. And it would be like Russia, maybe in submarines off the coast of the United States, firing missiles into the U.S. That would be an attack by Russia on the United States. And Putin says, if you do this, this isn't an attack by Ukraine. This is an attack by the United States on Russia. It's perfectly clear. It's perfectly sensible. It's perfectly stupid that Biden is doing this. But what makes it all the more obnoxious, frankly, is that the Pentagon and Biden said before the election they wouldn't do this. They explained that this would not have a consequential result on the direction of the war, but it could ratchet up the war and lead to an escalation that could end up being catastrophic. So this very decision that was just made in the last few days was rejected. It was made exactly the opposite way a few weeks ago. But, you know, we don't even know whether the president is compos mentis. We have no idea who's actually making these decisions. Is this Jake Sullivan? Is this the Pentagon? Is this the CIA? Is this Biden? We don't even hear from the guy. And these are momentous, irresponsible actions. I can't really recall something like this before. I haven't trusted these people from the get-go because they have been failures on diplomacy all along. But to make a decision like this when it's the waning weeks of a failed administration that's lost the election, a new government's coming in, it's shameful and it's dangerous.
You know, my mom graduated from high school in 1959. I graduated from high school in 1988. And for various reasons, I think her generation and my generation feared the Russians, right? That during my generation, it was the Cold War, and even had these duck and cover drills in school. We were so worried about a nuclear standoff or conflict with Russia. Today, people are out Christmas shopping. They're debating Trump's cabinet picks. They're getting ready for Thanksgiving. No one's treating this like we treated what arguably was a far less provocative situation in the Cold War. Like, we're actually engaged in a hot war right now with Russia in Ukraine, but we're ignoring it, and it's escalating.
You're exactly right. And by the way, we should be afraid. Russia has 6,000 nuclear warheads, and we should understand Russia is afraid of us. We have 6,000 nuclear warheads. Both sides have 1,600 actively deployed nuclear warheads aiming at each other. They're afraid of us. And, you know, this has been, and afraid of us not in some irrational, crazy sense, in the sense that they actually don't want nuclear war, and they don't want the United States military and its missiles really on their border. And that's what people really need to understand about why this war is taking place in the first place. What this whole thing in Ukraine has been about is that our deep state got it in its head at the end of the Soviet Union back in December 1991 that we rule the roost. We can do what we want. We can go anywhere we want. We can decide where our missile systems are. We can leave any treaty we want. We can put NATO military bases anywhere we want. And that Russia couldn't do anything about it. It's literally that attitude, that arrogance or that hubris. And so we started this NATO enlargement towards Russia. And the Russians kept saying, don't do this, don't come any closer. And we said, don't worry, it's our choice, we can go where we want. Clinton started the NATO expansion against the advice of top diplomats and experts, military experts and so forth. Maybe he wanted the vote of the Polish Americans in Illinois or Michigan. That's so irresponsible. But the first wave of NATO enlargement was to Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic. That was 1999. Then in 2004, George W. Bush Jr., another 7 countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, and Slovakia, just moving eastward. And the Russians said, stop, okay, stop. And then Bush and Cheney and Victoria Nuland, now my colleague at Columbia University, the ultra neocon, they said, no, we're going to go all the way to Ukraine and to Georgia, right up against Russia's 2,100-kilometer border with Ukraine. And the Russians said, do not do that. Do not come to our border. Like we once said to the Soviet Union, do not put military bases and nuclear weapons in Cuba. But the United States said, we don't have to care, we can do whatever we want. And that went through too, promising that NATO would enlarge to Ukraine and to Georgia. Then the United States helped to overthrow a Ukrainian government in February 2014 that wanted neutrality because
why doesn't
President
that get more
Yanukovych,
attention? We lived through that. We covered that on Fox News. Spend a minute on 14.
Why doesn't it get more attention? Why doesn't it get more attention? Because the New York Times and MSNBC and the mainstream media refuse to talk about any history. And Megan, I know about it in the most absurd way because I could not get 700 words, even online. I didn't demand print, just online in the New York Times, to respond to the fact that they said that the war that Putin launched against Ukraine was, quote, unprovoked. And they used that word 26 times, my assistant counted in their op-ed columns during the first year after February 2022. And the whole thing was provoked, and I happened to see it because I've been involved in that region for more than 30 years. And the New York Times would not tell the truth. They would not inform their readers, even with one online piece. They could.
So they're not going to talk about the fact that we orchestrated a coup in Ukraine in 2014 with Hillary Clinton.
They don't talk about any such stuff that we do. You think they were interested in who blew up Nord Stream? Do you think they were interested in who made the coup? Do you think they were interested in where the COVID virus came from? 1,000 things that are really messed up. They don't cover at all because they're kind of whatever the deep state tells us, whatever our official sources tell us, whatever our unnamed official sources tell us, that's what we're going with. And so they don't cover this stuff. They don't discuss any background, but they do carry a narrative. And the narrative is Putin's a madman and wants to recreate the Russian Empire, except don't worry, he'll never do anything with nuclear weapons. I mean, it's all completely inconsistent and incoherent.